We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 33a. On the previous Amud, Ula said that Reish Lakish said if a Tameh enters his hands into the Azara, he gets Malchus, and the idea is that Bia b'mixas, entering partially, is considered to be entering the Azara. And in the course of that discussion, both Abaya and Rava said that Tumah is Dechuya b'tzibur. Dechuya means that it's overridden, but it's not Hutra, it's not totally permitted, and so that's what the Gemara now says. Mechlal, from the discussion above, it is implied that Tarvayu Svira Lahu, that both of them, meaning both Abaye and Rava, they both hold Tumah Dechuya hi B'tzibur, that Tumah is Dechuya B'tzibur. It is overridden when the community is Tameh, but again, it's not Hutra, it's not totally permitted. Rashi explains Tumah Dechuya hi Kolomar. What it means to say is Bekushi Nidches Etzla. It's something that it's with difficulty, but we push it aside. Dichoy Bialma Al Yedei Nesias Avon Shahat Tzitz Meratza, and it's through the tzitz. The tzitz allows the carbon to be accepted. V'lo beheter gomer, but it's not a total permissibility. L'tumas meis idchi v'lo l'tumas ziva, and we say that it's pushed off as far as tumas meis. If there's tumas meis, that is overridden, but not as far as tumas ziva. That also was part of the discussion on the previous Amud. And the Gemara continues, Lema Messiah le, let's say the following brisa is a proof to what Ula said. Rashi explains, Lema Messiah le Ula, let us say that the following brisa supports Ula. Diamar again, that he says, Bia b'mixas shema bia, that entering the Azara partially is considered to be entering. And the Gemara brings the brisa says, Kol hasmichos shahayu sham, all of the leanings upon the animals that were there, Kore aleyan ani, Takef l'smicha shchita. We say that it's takef l'smicha shchita, meaning what was done by all the karbonos when they leaned upon the animal before the shchita, it was immediately before the shchita. You would have the smicha, they would lean upon the animal, and then immediately there would be shchita, there would be the slaughtering of the animal. Chutz mizu, with the exception of this one, that's referring to the carbon asham that is brought by a metzora. Shahaisa b'shar Nikanor, because that was by the gate of Nikanor. The shar Nikanor was the gate into the Azara. She'ein metzora yachol likanes l'sham, because the metzora was not able to enter into the Azara ad shemazin olav midam chatasu mitam hashamu, until they sprinkled for him the blood of his chatas and the blood of his asham. They applied that blood, and so therefore, since the metzora wasn't able to enter into the Azara, it was impossible that the shchita would be done immediately after the smicha. That's the point of the brisa over here. Rashi explains, takef l'smicha shchita, again immediately after the leaning upon the animals is the shchita. K'dechsev, now that's learned from the pasuk. It's written in the pasuk v'samach v'shachat, that he leans and he slaughters. Chutz mizu, with the exception of the following case, shal asham mitzora, with the exception of this case, the case of asham mitzora, shahaisa b'shar Nikanor, because the asham mitzora over there, the leaning had to be by the gate of Nikanor, who shar hamizrachi. Now this was the eastern gate into the Azara. K'detanan b'shkalim, we learned this in a Mishnah in Shkalim, shebemizrach shar Nikanor v'cholol shar lo neskadish, like the area of the entry itself that did not have the holiness b'kedushas v'azara, it didn't have the holiness of the Azara. K'damrinon b'keitzad solin, like we say in Keitzad solin, lefi shahamitzora omed sham umachnes yadav li Azara, the mitzora would stand there and he would bring his hands into the Azara, v'sham motziin lo esa asham, and they would bring the asham, they would bring it out to him, v'somei chalav, and he'd do the smicha, v'chozer machniso l'makam shchitaso, and then they would bring it into the place where it's going to be slaughtered, v'shochto, and slaughter it. And why? Because the mitzora was not able to actually enter the Azara and do the smicha, until they sprinkled for him from the dam of his chatas, lo olav mamish. It doesn't mean they sprinkled upon him, mamish kamar, it doesn't mean olav like actually on him, she'ein nosden al bahonos elamidam ha'asham, because from the putting on the thumbs of the mitzora, that was only done from the blood of the asham, and this is talking about dam chataso. Elashe zarkin b'shvilo, it means that they threw the blood, they applied the blood for him, dam chataso v'dam asham. We're talking about the blood of his chatas and the blood of his carbon asham, and again, that's what the brisa says, that when it came to the asham mitzora, it was impossible to do the shchita right after the smicha, because he wasn't able to enter to the Azara to do the smicha. And so the Gemara continues and asks, V'iyamrid bia b'mixas lo shma bia. Now, if it's true that entering partially is not considered to be entering, so what's the issue? Li'ayil yodei v'lismoch, let him enter his hands into the Azara and do the smicha, so effectively the smicha will be done in the Azara, and then immediately you can do the shchita, because again, the shchita has to be done in the Azara. Rashi explains, La'ayil yodei l'socha pesach, he should enter his hands into the entrance, meaning really into the Azara, v'lismoch, and do the smicha, v'lishchitei eitz al hapesach, and then just do the shchita right by the door. Tahakol hapsachim shayu sham rachvan eser amos. Now Rashi explains that all of the doors that led over there and by the Beis Hamikdash, all of the doors that were made, they were a width of 10 amos. And so v'chamesh mehen betzafon. Now in the terms of the Shar Nikanor, which was the eastern entryway, the eastern gate going into the Azara, so some karbanos need to be shechted, need to be slaughtered, as we said, in the northern part of the Azara. And the karbanashim, the kachei kachim, karbanashim, which is a kachei kachim, that needs to be slaughtered in the northern parts of the Azara. And so Rashi here just wants to establish that Shar Nikanor was not only that he'd be able to enter into the northern part of the Azara. If he would stick his hands in, it's not only that he's entering into the Azara, but in the northern part as well. And so Rashi says, v'chamesh mehen betzafon, 5 amos of the width of that door was in the northern part. V'chamesh mehen bedarman, 5 were in the south, meaning it was exactly centered. The Shar Nikanor was exactly centered in the eastern part of the Azara, the eastern wall of the Azara, and so 5 of the amos of that doorway were actually in the north. Sha'pesach mechuvan keneged pischo shel heichel be'emtza Azara, because the door again was exactly in the middle towards where the door of the heichel was. It was exactly in the middle of the Azara. V'yachol lishchot lifnei tzefono shel pesach. So then you could do the slaughtering right by the north part of that doorway. The havalei tzafon, that would be considered north. V'kasal gadaitach, and Rashi notes right now we think Rebbe that this Bryce is following Rebbe. Diomar kol tzafon ha'azara, because Rebbe says the entire north area of the Azara is kosher. L'shchitas kachim is kosher for the slaughtering of kachim. This was a discussion we had earlier. What does it mean, the north of the Azara? What part of the Azara exactly? Rebbe says the entire north part of the Azara. V'af tzafon shebemakam drisas raglei kohanim v'Yisrael, even the northern part of the Azara, which is an area where the Kohanim and the Yisraelim are allowed to go, kid Amar Le'el, as we said earlier. And the Gemara continues and answers. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Hamani, who is the author of this brisa? Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda. The author of this brisa is Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda. The Amar Merachak Tzafon, that he says it has to be a distance in the north, meaning to say he does not allow the entire north part of the Azara to be the area where you can do the slaughtering, so you wouldn't be able to bring the animal right up to the door by Shar Nikanor, right up to the gate in the northern part of the Azara. That's not going to work. Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda actually says that it has to be the north part of the Azara, but also next to, corresponding to, the Mizbeach. Rashi explains, Merachak Tzafon, Tzafon HaKosher L'Shchitas Kachei Kachim. The north part of the Azara that's kosher for the slaughtering of Kachei Kachim, Rachok Min HaPesach Yoser Michaf Beis Am. It's actually more than 22 amos away from that door from Shar Nikanor. Makom Drisas Yisrael, from the area where the Yisraelim walk. Umakom Drisas Kohanim, in the area where the Kohanim walk. Techol Achas Mehen Yud Aleph. The area of Drisas Yisrael, it's 11 amos. The area of Drisas Kohanim is another 11 amos. It's a total of 22 amos. But Meseches Midos, that's in Meseches Midos. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Diamar Ezot Safon Mikir Mizbeach. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda says what's considered north in terms of the slaughtering of Kachei Kachim. It's from the wall of the Mizbeach, Vi'ad Kosel Azara, until the wall of the Azara. So between the Mizbeach and the Azara, Kineged Tzvono Shel Mizbeach, corresponding to the north, essentially north of the Mizbeach, Vesulo, and nothing else is considered to be north as far as slaughtering of Kachei Kachim. Hilkach, therefore, tzarech lahachziro b'tzafan ha-mizbeach. You're going to need to return the animal to the north of the Mizbeach. V'leka teikef l'smicha shchita, and there's not going to be immediately after smicha shchita, even if, again, the mitzora would stick his hands into the gate, into the Azara, in order to do the smicha. But the Gemara continues and asks, V'liyavid pishpesh, but why not make another door? Just make a small door in the northern part of the Azara, again, corresponding to where the Mizbeach is, and let the Mitzorah, let him stick his hands in over there and do the smicha, and the north side, right, corresponding to the Mizbeach. Why isn't that a possible solution? And to that, the Gemara says, Abaye v'Rava, Diamri Tarvayu, Abaye and Rava, they both say that you're not allowed to just make any change in terms of the structure of the Beis HaMikdash, of the Azara, as we see in a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim. The pasuk in Divrei Hayamim says, Hakol b'chsav miyad Hashem olai hiskil kol melachos hatavnis. It says that all of the work that was done, it has to be miyad Hashem, it has to be exact, and therefore it's impossible to make this small kind of a door. And the Gemara continues, Ika Diamri, there are those that say a different version of what Rav Yosef responded in terms of this Bryce. Again, Rav Yosef above said that the Bryce is following Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda, where north means, where you're slaughtering the animal in the north of the Azar, it means corresponding to the Mizbeach. That's why it's impossible to have a solution where the Mitzorah is going to stick his hands into the Azara to do smicha. And again, Ika Diamri, some say a different version of what Rav Yosef said. The reason why it's not a possible solution for the Mitzorah to just stick his hands into the Azara, Amar Rav Yosef Yosef says, Kol hasomech, anybody who leans upon the animal, meaning when you do smicha by the carbon, rosho v'ruba machnes, he would have to enter his head and the majority of his body, and that, of course, he would certainly not be able to do. That would not be a partial entry, that would be fully entering. My time, what's the reason why he has to enter why his head and the majority of his body have to enter? What's the reason for that? Because kol kocho ba'inan has to be with all of his strength. When he leans upon the animal, it has to be with all of his strength. So hilkach, therefore, lo efshar, it's not possible. This is not a possible solution. And the Gemara continues and asks, "My kosavar, what exactly does the Tan of this brisa hold in terms of smicha?" We're talking here about the requirement of smicha and saying that when it comes to the smichas asham mitzora, so we're saying it's impossible to be done right before the shechita because again the mitzora is not able to enter the azara. So what exactly does the Tana hold about the smicha? Ikosavar smichas asham mitzora doraisa. If he holds that the leaning upon the asham of a mitzora is a doraisa, it's halacha from the Torah. V'teikaf l'smicha shechita doraisa. And there's a doraisa halacha that right after the smicha has to be the shechita. If this is all doraisa, so then the Torah is saying that he could enter the azara. So leol v'lismach lahedya, let him go in and do the smicha explicitly to Rachman Amar, because that's what the Torah says. And so if you're going to hold it's all doraisa, what's the issue over here? Why is it that we're trying to say that he should do the smicha and then not immediately do the shechita? The Torah says to do it. Obviously, it's permitted for him to enter the azara in this situation. And the Gemara says, Amar Ravada bar Masna, Ravada bar Masna says, technically it is a doraisa, and technically it is permitted for him to enter, but gezeira shemayirba bepsios, but there's a decree from the Rabbanon, maybe after he does that smicha, he's not going to immediately exit, he's going to take extra steps that he didn't need to take, and that already would be problematic, it would be a violation, and it's because of that gezeira that we say that he should not enter the azara. And Rashi explains, Hachi Garcinon, this is the proper text, V'liavid pishpesh, why not make a small door, Upeirusho pesach katan. What the Gemara means to say is, again, a small door. And Rashi continues, V'hacha parchina, so we're asking, V'niavid pesach katan bekosel tzfoni shel azara, make a small door in the northern wall of the azara, keneged ha-mizbeach, corresponding to the mizbeach, V'yamon mitzor b'chalalu, and then the mitzor will stand in that entryway, V'yachnes yado v'yismoch, he'll put his hands in and do smicha, Ilav d'biyah b'mixas shmabiyah, if not for the fact that entering partially is considered to be a problem of entering. Other than that, that should have been a solution. And then the Gemara said, Hakol b'chsav, they brought the pasuk in Divrei Hayomim, everything is written, Kachomar David, this is what David says. Kol pesach ha'azaro midoseo, vinyan kol habayis, the entire building, everything in the Beis HaMikdash, nimser li miyad Hashem, was given from Hashem, ve'ein lahosav ala cheshbon, you can't add on, ubiyah b'mixas lo shma biyah, and entering partially is not considered to be entering. And Rashi continues, the Gemara then brought another version of Rav Yosef. Amar Rav Yosef said, Liolam Rebbe, he really, the Brisa is following Rebbe. You can slaughter anywhere in the north area of the Azara. With the Kohamrid Leol Velismoch, and that what you're saying, let him go in and let him do the smicha. He can stick his hands in. That's not possible. Kol asomech, because when you do the smicha, you're going to have to use all of your strength. It's going to have to be Rosho Verubo. And then the Gemara asked, Mai Kosavar, what exactly does this Tana hold? Hai Tana Damar Kol Asmichos, Tzrichos Tekef Lesmicha Shchita Chutz Mizu. The Tana of this Brisa says all the smichas of the animals, of the karbonis, it has to be immediately after the smicha shchita, except for the yasha mitzora. And if it's doraisa, leol v'lismach behedya, let him go in and do it explicitly. D'rachmano amarlo sheikones v'yismach. That's what the Torah says. He should enter and do smicha. And then the Gemara said, shema yarbe bepsios. There's a concern he might take extra steps. Leachar shesamach, after he does smicha, im yikones psil etzad p'nim Yosef. He's going to take even one step more inside the azara, mishah yatzarch, more than he needs to. He's not going to go straight to exit, but he'll enter a little further. Nimtza anush kares. It's going to come out. He'll have a punishment of kares. And the Gemara continues, Ika Diamri, there are those that say a different version of Ravada bar Masna. Amar Ravada bar Masna says, Smichas Osha Mitzora Doraisa, the leaning upon the Osha Mitzora is in fact Doraisa. However, V'tekef L'smicha Shchita Lav Doraisa, but the idea that you have to do Shchita immediately after Smicha, that is not Doraisa. And Rashi explains, Smichas Asham Mitzora Doraisa, the Smichas Asham Mitzora is Doraisa, Keshar Hashamos, like other Hashamos. The Gamrin Lu Smicha Mehekesha, to Kechatas Kasham Perakama. There's a Hekesh between Chatas and Asham in the first Perek, just like there's a Smicha by Chatas, so too by Asham. And the Asham Mitzora is no different than other Hashamos, and therefore we say the Smicha itself is Doraisa. However, take of L'Smicha Shchita Lav Doraisa, the idea that the Shchita has to be immediately after the Smicha, that is not Doraisa, the Lomash Malay V'Samach V'Shach. v'shachat, because this Tana does not understand that v'samach v'shachat means b'mokom shesomech yishchot, that in the same place that the smicha is done, that the shchita has to be done, and so therefore, since takef l'smicha shchita is not d'oraisa, that's why it was possible. That's why we didn't say that the mitzorah should actually enter into the azara in order to do the smicha. And the Gemara continues, Meisveh, we have a question on this from the following brisa, v'samach v'shachat. This was a brisa we brought earlier. It says in the pasuk again, he leans and he slaughters, and we understand as follows, masmicha b'tahorin, just like the smicha has to be done with those who are pure, av shchita b'tahorin, so too the shchita has to be done with those who are pure. And so the Gemara asks, v'yamrid lav d'oraisa. Now if you're going to say that takef l'smicha shchita is not d'oraisa, b'tmeya nami mashkachas lo, isn't it possible to do the smicha with those who are tamei, because you'll simply do it outside of the azara, and there is no halacha of takef l'smicha shchita. It would be okay for the tamei person to do the smicha outside of the azara, and then you'll do the shchita inside the azara. And so the Gemara says, ela epach, rather reverse it. Smichas asha mitzora lav d'oraisa. Really, it's the smichas asha mitzora that's not d'oraisa. However, v'takef l'smicha shchita d'oraisa, but the idea that shchita has to be done right after smicha in the same place, that idea actually is d'oraisa. Rashi explains, Meisvei v'samach v'shachar haidis desamchinu kral hekesha samchinu. Again, the reason why v'samach v'shachar are near each other is for a hekesh. Kidamrinan masmicha b'tahorim, like we said, just like smicha is with tahorim, so to shchita is with tahorim. Usmicha depshita lon ba mishum dechsiv lifnei Hashem. When it comes to smicha, it says lifnei Hashem. B'shchita, since it says lifnei Hashem b'shchita, since by the slaughtering it says lifnei Hashem, tetzuricha shetei lifnim, it needs to be inside the azara. Umishum detakef smicha shchita, and because the smicha has to be done immediately before the shchita, tzarich sheikonis hasomech lifnim. So now the person doing the smicha also has to enter into the azara. V'lamo tami mibachutz v'lismoch b'fnim yefsher. And again, to have a tami person standing outside and then enter inside, put his hands inside to do the smicha, that's impossible. Kedamron le'el, like we said earlier, sharosha v'ruba machnes, that his head and the majority of his body has to enter. And so therefore, again, the whole idea over here of v'samach v'shachat is, since it says lifnei Hashem by shchita, and the shchita has to be in the azara, so the smicha also needs to be in the azara, because takef l'smicha shchita, and that's why a tamei person cannot do the smicha. Now v'yamrit lav d'oraisa, if you're going to say it's not d'oraisa, meaning takef l'smicha shchita is not d'oraisa, hechi pshita le smicha b'torin. So how does the brisa know that smicha has to be done with pure individuals? The whole way the brisa knows that is because takef l'smicha shchita is d'oraisa. B'tmei nami, so you could have done it with tmei and shesomech b'chutz, just do the smicha outside the azara, and then the Torah person will bring the animal in, and you'll do the shchita, you'll do the slaughtering. And so the Gemara instead said, really, takef l'smicha shchita is d'oraisa. That's clear from this brisa. But smichas asha mitzora lav d'oraisa. What he really said was that smichas asha mitzora is not d'oraisa. Kasavar she'enu bechlal ashamas. Why would it be that asha mitzora is different than other ashams? Other carbon ashams, all other carbon ashams, we say that smichas d'oraisa. Here it's not. The reason is because he holds that asha mitzora is not included. It's not counted like other ashamos, because the only reason you bring asham mitzora, it's not like in a regular asham that's brought as a guilt offering. This is brought, the asham mitzora is brought as a preparation, as part of his process, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Beis.